This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, what a busy weekend ahead, as a large part of the franchise world heads to South Florida for the IFA World Franchise Show on Friday and Saturday. And of course, Sunday is Mother's Day in America, which will make an extra day or two in Miami an impossibility for many, I'm certain. Shifting gears, many thanks to Scott Thompson for turning in a command performance last week. Lots of take-home value, but no surprise there, as that's just what Scott is all about. And today's guest is no different. What does it take to grow a startup company into a $600 million franchise model that changes lives for everyone it touches? Greg Muzzillo tells all. Greg will tell us how he moved from failed pitches to building a high-impact business through flexibility, networking, and support systems. This conversation is packed with strategic insight for aspiring franchisors, entrepreneurs, and anyone ready to learn how a friendly chat morphed into franchise greatness. Greg Muzzillo on Seizing Opportunity when I return in 2 minutes or less.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. Greg Muzzillo founded ProForma in 1978, 1 year after graduating from college. He started the company's franchising operations in 1986. Today, ProForma has more than 650 franchise offices worldwide, with more than $600 million in sales. The company has been named 3 times to the Inc. magazine list of the 500 fastest-growing private companies in America. In addition, Greg has founded a staffing franchise company, has previously served on the IFA Board of Directors, on the Board of Trustees at the University of Tampa, and currently, he and his wife, Vera, ProForma's CEO, serve on the board of the University of Florida Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center, where together they co-sponsor the $50,000 annual Big Idea Gator business plan competition. Together, they are the proud parents of 10 children and grandparents to 3. Greg Muzzillo, welcome to Franchise Today.
Stan, thanks for having me.
Been a long time that we've had each other in what was once called a Rolodex, which is now called a contact list. And responsibility for all of that probably lands back with the late, great Jerry Darnell.
Great friend, great franchising expert, and a great contributor to our early success.
So that's a great segue to what I do every week, Greg, is I ask my guests to take a trip back in the Wayback Machine and go back to where and when it was that franchising connected with your life and how that looked. What was that inflection point all about? What were you doing then?
Sure. I started the business 1 year after I had graduated from college. I was working for Deloitte & Touche on the audit team. And I loved studying accounting, but I hated doing it. So I had a buddy that was a fraternity brother, and the two of us would hang out on Friday nights looking for dates for Saturday night. And the more he told me about what he was doing as a distributor or a broker of business forms and business printing, I thought, you know what? You know sales, I know accounting, we can do this. So we each put in $100, bought a phone answering machine and some stationery. And within 6 months of starting our careers, we both quit and decided to start ProForma as distributors of business forms, and printing. And so that was 1978, and we grew nicely. By 1984, 1985, we were recognized by Inc. magazine 3 years in a row on their Inc. 500 list of the 500 fastest growing companies when there are only 500 of them, Stan. But in 1984, 85, we decided to expand from Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I grew up, which is where I started ProForma, which is where our only operations were. And we were doing $5 or $6 million a year. And back then that was good money, enough. And we decided to expand to Columbus, Ohio, 2 hours away. Put ads in the paper. There's no internet, 1985, 86. So put some ads in the paper, however we did it, found a bunch of great candidates, went down there, interviewed a bunch of candidates, got that down to a few, went back down and interviewed the few, and then made a decision, and we scheduled our third trip to Columbus to hire our general manager of our first remote sales office. Went down there, talked to him about our offer, and he said, guys, the more I'm thinking about this, and he was probably our age. I imagine at that point I was 26 or 27. He said, guys, the more I think about this, I just can't come work for you because I like you guys so much and I like your story so much. I want to own my own distributorship just like you. Well, that seemed like abysmal failure, Stan. And I remember that 2-hour drive home on my former partner. I bought him out many years ago, decades ago. It was a quiet drive and it seemed like failure. But the more I thought about it, I thought, wait a minute now, how could we have used our infrastructure, what little infrastructure we had, to help this guy start his own business? Because clearly my former partner and I weren't the only two people that wanted to own their own business. Maybe more people like this guy wanted to own their own business. And I scratched my head and I thought about it and I talked around, and ends up I had a buddy that was working for one of the real estate franchises. And he explained franchising to me as I was walking around, talking around, and just looking for solutions. And that's where the idea to franchise came from. And so I'm an immersion kind of guy, Stan. And so we joined the International Franchise Association. I immersed myself in the world of franchising. And we started franchising in 86. And we tried to be a conversion franchisor from the beginning, but the industry participants, they rejected us soundly. Like, why would we join you 20-some-year-old punks and use your name and blah, blah, blah. And that didn't go well. So we thought, well, let's go down the traditional road of franchising and recruit greenfield, startup franchise. Mm-hmm. And so we went to some of these own your own business shows. And I remember going to one business show, and each one of our brochures that explained franchising probably cost us $10. And we were handing them out like they were candy at these booths, at these own your own business shows, if you remember back in the day.
Oh, yeah, sure, I do.
And I don't remember where exactly that was, but we had no luck. And we probably handed out, I don't know how many thousands of dollars worth of brochures. And so at the next show, it might have been in Dallas, but I don't remember where. There was a booth across from me, and there was a guy, and there was a lull in the traffic. And I went over and asked the guy, because he seemed pretty gregarious and whatever. And I said, hey, do you guys have any luck recruiting people at these shows? He says, absolutely. He says, we do great. We recruit 3 to 5 every show, or whatever he said. I said, oh my God, can I meet with you? I'd love to learn more. He said, absolutely. And we went to lunch, dinner, we got talking. He agreed to do some consulting for ProForma at an embarrassing low amount of money. And he taught me step by step everything we needed to do to go to these own your own business shows and connect with prospects and quit giving away $10 brochures like they were candy, to have a little seminar webinar in the back with a couple of chairs up against the back wall, and then meet with people in the hotel room. And sure enough, I'll bet you our first 50, he taught us not only how to recruit the first 50 or so franchise owners that we had, but then he flew into Cleveland, Ohio. He helped us put together a training program and a sales kit. And he was really fundamental in putting together what really was the early success of ProForma: recruiting, training, and supporting those early franchise owners to make them successful. So anyhow, that was how I met Jerry, and that's how we got involved. And boy, he just didn't charge a whole lot of money. He was just he charged enough money that it was okay enough, but it sure wasn't all that meaningful to him. But I'll never forget the guy because he put us on the map. So that was in about 86. And sometime in the early 90s, 92, 93, we were so successful in franchising that we were able to become a conversion franchise, only recruiting people already in the industry. And so we slowly evolved out of recruiting people outside of the industry. Today, we only recruit people in our industry with over $1 million in sales to join us. And we do have a program called our affiliate program for people not in the industry that want to get into the industry, that for a couple $100 gives them a path to business ownership. But anyhow, that's the story. That's how I met Jerry. And I am forever indebted to him. What a fortuitous conversation with a stranger across the aisle from me at an own your own business.
Yeah, it just goes to show you never know who you're going to meet, where and when, and what kind of an impact they can have on your life. Amazing story. One other question. Who was it and what real estate company? Are you able to tell me that?
You know, it was a good buddy of mine that was a fraternity brother. I don't remember which real estate company it was, but he was the president of our fraternity 2 years, I think, before I became president of fraternity. And he was just very friendly, sat down and explained the whole world of franchising to me, and because it was just all foreign to me. And I thought to myself, well, why would somebody that's already in the real estate business need a franchise? Because they're already in the business. And of course, we know today our franchise owners could never afford. We've got probably $30-some million in our technology platform. They could never afford the technology, the business management operating systems, the company store operating systems, the business success resources and programs, the vendor programs. You know, we're at the end of the day a distributor of everything that we sell. And so we have negotiated pricing and service and so forth. But he really opened up my eyes to the whole business world. Because you know what, Stan, when you study accounting, you don't even realize everything that's out there. You sort of learn manufacturing companies. You sort of think that everybody makes everything they sell because you're immersed in learning cost accounting. And it was only when my former partner and I sat down and he exposed me to the world of distributorship, and then that fraternity brother of mine sat down. We talked about franchising, and then I got into International Franchise Association. And I learned so much and paid so little. If anybody's thinking about franchising their business and they don't join the International Franchise Association, they're like a moron. And I mean that from the ground up. And then I got lucky enough to, I don't know, I don't even remember how I got on the board of directors of the International Franchise Association. And I had an opportunity to network and meet with the who's who of franchising. It's life-changing. And I tell people to this day, I speak at entrepreneurial schools, entrepreneurial programs at the University of Florida, University of Notre Dame, University of Tampa, my school, Baldwin Wallace College. And I tell people, among a lot of other things, to be an ask-hole. Ask questions, be curious, and humble yourself. I mean, I just ask a cajillion questions, and it's amazing how many people, when you ask for advice, how many people are happy to show up and truly care and truly share.
What's so funny to me is in franchise sales for years, I will bet you that 9 out of 10 people that are in the business of franchise development always start a conversation with, well, we've got this and we've got that and our brand this and our brand that, and we've got the best training and we've got the best secret sauce. When Jerry Darnell would start a conversation, it would always be, so how can I help you today? What can I do for you today? And all of a sudden, you flip the script. You stand out head and shoulders apart from anybody close to you because you're not telling me all about you. You're asking me all about me. And no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's what I learned from Jerry.
And how do people make you feel? Not your list of attributes. And Jerry just had a great way of making everybody feel valued and value.
So I asked about the real estate company because in that same date set, 1985 is when I got into franchising. And the first 10 years of my franchise career was spent doing conversion franchising for ERA, Prudential, Help You Sell. So I just wondered if your frat brother is somebody that might even be somebody I know.
Bob Colvin, Cleveland, Ohio, if you know Bob.
Century 21, I believe.
It very well could be. I don't want to say because I'm not 100% sure.
Well, it's just a small world. and I love how, especially in franchising, people talk about 3 degrees of separation, but in our space, you've got to put a decimal point in front of that, right?
I agree.
So walk us up the milestones. Now you've got a franchise organization instead of a distributorship. What do the next few years look like, and how quickly did things change?
Well, I had one other critical moment, and I forget the guy's name that started Management Recruiter. He was in Cleveland, Ohio, and they were the most successful franchisor headquartered in Cleveland. And I'm embarrassed that I forget his name. He's since passed. And again, being an asshole, I called him up and I said, hey, would you mind if I came over and just got some advice from you about franchising? And this is really, we were now about ready to roll out the program, but hadn't quite rolled it out. And he was kind enough to spend an hour with me. And, a lot of people talk about having mentors and all that. And I think, in many cases, you can get 95% of the juice out of the first squeeze in a relationship, And anyhow, so I only had one meeting with a guy, and it was a great meeting. Not that he probably would have had more. And at the end of the meeting, I said, well, do you have any more advice? He said, yeah, don't sell dirt. I said, what does that mean? He said, Greg, don't ever sell territories. Well, it ends up in Management Recruiters back in the day when he was putting their program together. They sold fixed territories. I think it was probably some series of counties. And Stan, there's a lot of people in this world that would say the sky is the limit as to how much money they want to make. But many people will get to a certain point where they won't do another marginal hour of work for another marginal dollar of income. And so he had many territories that were never going to optimize themselves because they had people that owned those territories and had paid for them. And so it really limited the value of his company in many different areas. And that made a lot of sense to me. And in fact, we were thinking of having a territorial program. And I went back to the drawing board after what he told me. And thank God for that meeting, because I'm a 20-some-year-old kid from Cleveland, Ohio. How much is some young aspiring kid going to sell the rights to San Francisco for when you're Cleveland, Ohio? $10,000 and a cup of coffee or something. You know what I mean? And anyhow, I realized territories don't make any sense in our business. We're a B2B company. And today, my great relationship at one company in Cleveland may move somewhere to San Francisco or Chicago or New York and still want to buy from me. And nobody wants to tell that person, well, you're not in my territory. I can't serve you anymore. So we came up with a program that did not have territories. It had some account protection, but no territories. And I think today ProForma is worth 10x, maybe 50x what it would have been had I not met with that fellow and had he not told me, don't sell dirt. One piece of advice, 10x or 50x the value of our business.
Alan Schonberg is who you're talking
Alan,
about.
yeah, thank you. God, what a great and giving man and a great and giving heart. Yeah.
But you seem to have a propensity to repeat your good fortune and running into one person like Jerry, one person like Alan, one person like Bob. That seems to be a recurring thing with you. Was there not also a recurrence with a guy named Fred someplace in your career?
Well, yeah. So I'll tell you that story. So FredDeLuca, a bunch of us guys were introduced at the first IFA convention I went to. And our attorney, he introduced a whole bunch of us. Johnny Amico, Frankie, the guy from the Shade Company. There were 6 or 7 or 8 of us Italians. We just became fast friends. We went to a cigar store. We all bought a bunch of cigars and got some wine. And we just hung out. And nobody knew who worked for what or what was their business as much as we were just a bunch of Italian goofballs having fun. We became very good friends. And then I would hang out with Fred after board meetings at the IFA. And Fred would always say, hey, Greg, you got an interesting business. You think you'd like to have an investor? And Fred loved to piddle around in investing in other people's businesses. He was just a ravenous kind of a learner. And I always would say, no, but, thanks for asking. Well, one day I bought out my partner. I think it was in 95, 96, something like that, somewhere around there. And the bank came to me and said, hey, Greg, we had an asset-based loan. In other words, it was financed by receivables. And so the money really was supposed to be used for funding accounts payable. However, I used some of that money to fund paying off my partner. Well, I didn't know, because I probably never read a bank agreement in my life. That was a breach of the bank agreement. And they said, you better find an investor or we're going to have to call your loan. Now, that didn't sound like a good thing for the business, man. I'm smart enough to understand that. And I said, oh, shit, remember that Fred guy? He wanted to invest. So I called up Fred. I said, hey, Fred, remember how you used to always want to make an investment in ProForma? I said, well, I could kind of use an investor. I don't think I told him how desperate I was, but He said, hey, Greg, come on up to Connecticut. I went up to Connecticut and blah, blah, blah. Well, anyhow, Fred became an investor in the business at a very fortuitous time because it wasn't just the money. I think when people in our industry heard, wow, this FredDeLuca, the guy that started Subway, and if you remember back in the mid-90s, they were coming on like gangbusters, the number one franchise in every category, every magazine. And we got a lot of instant credibility, not just money, but instant credibility, even though submarine sandwiches and of course, our business don't really have a lot in common. But I think people thought if FredDeLuca, the founder of Subway, sees something in that business, I should look into it. It gave us instant overnight credibility.
I call that a halo effect.
Yeah, you're right. And now, of course, Fred has passed, and so did his former partner. I know we don't have time for that story, so we won't get into it. Get involved in your trade associations, immerse yourself in whatever it is that you think you want to do, and become an asshole. Become a relentless learner. To this day, I'm a relentless learner.
Well, here's what you're going to learn about here in a moment. You're going to learn all about my sponsor because we're going to take a quick break, Greg. And on the other side of that break, I'll share my FredDeLuca story with you, and then we'll continue. I'm Stan Friedman. This is Franchise Today. We're talking today with Greg Muzzillo, founder of ProForma, and we're back with the rest of that story right after this. Don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by Profit Keeper, the #1 franchise analytics platform for franchisors and franchisees. Trusted by more than 150 brands and 50,000 franchisees, Profit Keeper connects KPI, benchmark, and royalty data from your locations, groups, and territories. With Profit Keeper, you see stats in real time, presented simply and graphically. This makes it easy to identify actionable information for franchisees to help them drive profitability and brand growth at the unit level. No more wrangling data and guessing what works and what doesn't. To learn more and to get started, visit profitkeeper.com/franchise today. And we continue our conversation today with Greg Muzzillo, founder of ProForma and the world's largest asshole. How's that? That was a great story you shared, and I'll share one back with you about Fred. I've been so inspired in all the years that I've contributed work in the IFA to the heavy lifting that we as members have done for years. But never did I stand in awe as much as when Paul Rocchio would hold at the convention each year the first-time reception for first-timers at an IFA. And that group continued to grow year over year, hundreds and hundreds of people each year at the convention. You know who the keynote speaker was at that reception every year? Fred. And who'd believe that the guy who has 30,000 stores has time to come to the IFA and stand in front of a room of first-timers who all stood in awe? I mean, talk about what you said about the credibility factor. Here's a room full of people staring at the founder of Subway who's standing in front of them at the podium telling them, I wasn't the brightest guy in the world, but I figured if I could do one, I could do two. And when I did two, I said, well, I could probably get to 5. And we just kept doing that over and over and over. And if I could do it, so could you. Everybody in that room just lit up. I mean, he was so disarming. He was so innocent. He was so vulnerable. That's the word. And he just let you look at him and realize he's just a human being too. And I think that there was a meta message. As you said at the beginning of this conversation today, it's not the words that matter. It's how people make you feel. Fred made everybody in that room feel invincible. You can do this. I think it was just so much a mark of the man.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's hit some more milestones. And one of those is you mentioned a bit about your wife. Is she not the owner of the business?
Well, she's the CEO. We both own the business. Now, we're a woman-owned business, so she owns a bit more than I do.
That's the point I was getting to. So that's something that interests me in large part because of the years of service I've done at IFA, promoting diversity in franchising and trying to encourage more women and people who never thought that they could become a franchisee, learn that you can own your business and thus own your life. And so it's been a lot of fun watching more and more women and husbands and wives like yourselves getting into the franchise arena together. So what about some other milestones, Greg? What are some of the big ones? Because like you said, with all the years that you've been at this, we can't hit them them all. But moving forward in a world that moves as quickly as ours has, in that technology has replaced the stamp and the printing, what are some of the biggest changes that you can point out that you've not only been a witness to, but maybe a pioneer of?
I think what may have amazed me the most is the kind of people that were drawn to franchising back in the early days. Honestly, I just thought we were selling sales jobs to people instead of, I'm being candid with you, instead of like this guy that we couldn't hire in Columbus. He wanted to own his own business. So how could we have empowered him to own his own business, but at the end of the day, work with us kind of a thing? And I had no idea the wonderful people that would want to truly own their own business and shape the future of our company. I remember in the IFA, we learned how to create and the importance of creating an owner advisory group, a franchise advisory council. And early on, we created one. And thank God the cream rises to the top. We had so many wonderful people step up to leadership in those early days. And we went through some tough times where we weren't necessarily having the right capital, times where we didn't have all the right resources, et cetera. But the franchise advisory council stood by us, stood with us, and saw us through tough times and saw us on to some unbelievable times. But not only the quality of the people, but the success of the people. Our top franchise owner does $50 million in sales. We have many people that do over $25 million a year. And I had no idea when we started this that those kind of people and those kind of success stories would come to the table. Just unbelievable, successful people. Today, we have so many of these people. We have not only an annual convention, but a separate $1 million club, because those people that do more than $1 million, all the way up 50 million, want to just be able to hang out with each other. And most of the people that are active with us today are members of that $1 million club. I think the average active owner with us does somewhere between $2 and $3 million in sales. And of course, we have a good number of people that joined us in the 90s or those early days that do less than that. Some of them are getting older, and I call it milking the cow till it dies. And that's okay. That's okay. We will never, ever kick those people out of our business because they joined us when they didn't know any better. They were part of the foundation of ProForma, and I will always honor them. I will always thank them, and they will always be an important part of who we are and how we've grown. But somewhere along the way, we did have a realization that because in the 90s, we sort of abandoned greenfield startup franchising to get immersed into our industry, recruiting people in our industry. But I realized this is just a great industry. Stan, if you think about it, we sell printing, promotional products, and packaging, custom printing, custom printed promotional products, like all those giveaway items, hats, mugs, backpacks, t-shirts, etc. Businesses in North America spend about $300 and some billion a year on what we sell. By the way, that's more than all people in North America spend on all fast food, hamburger, chicken, tacos, submarine sandwiches, and pizza. It's a humongous industry. Every business has to buy some of what we sell. Every business runs out and has to order more. It ought to be illegal, right? It's a wonderful B2B business. And so there are people not in the business that want to get into the business. And so we came up with the affiliate program. And I think today now that affiliate program is only about 2 years old. And we have, I think, about 200 affiliates. And so people who can join, like I said, for a couple $100 and study underneath a successful $1 million, multi-million-dollar owner and learn the business, and then have the opportunity to eventually spin off and own their own business. And that's very exciting to us because, Stan, I didn't know anything about this business, and I got into it. And I sometimes think I should get on my knees every night and thank God I'm in this business. And so that's exciting. I also remember a day I was at the International Franchise Association, and I found my purpose. I remember we were sitting at a round table, and those round tables at IFA, you know how valuable they are. And so whoever, forget who hosts the round table, but he had us all go around and tell us what business we were in. And it got to me, and I don't even know where the idea came from, Stan. But when it got to be my turn, and I was going to say we're in the printing, promotional products, and packaging business, but it got to be my turn, and I said, I'm Greg Muzzillo, and we're in the dream business. We help our franchise owners' dreams come true. And ever since that day, I think what a wonderful purpose in life to be able to help other people achieve their dream. And what a powerful dream of business success, business ownership, and being able to control one's own life. And so my wife and I, we spend way more money than we ever would need to help our owners pursue their dreams. Like I said, we've got $30-some million in the last 6 years in our technology platform. But I'm thankful that we're just privately held because we have no interest in raising money from anybody else. I don't want to be accountable to anybody quarterly. I love the fact that we're able to invest the time and the resources and the energy to truly help our owners' dreams come true and power their dream. And I love it, although I tell people you never have to hug me. I do love it when people at convention and $1 Million Club come up to me and hug me, and they hug Vera and they say, thank you. Thank you. You changed my life. And, money's important, of course. Money's sort of how we measure success to a certain degree, but those hugs and those thank yous, they're priceless.
Another great segue, Greg, talking about money. What about philanthropy? What kind of charity work is part of your world?
Yeah, we're very involved in lots of different charities. We've been very involved at the University of Notre Dame, very involved in giving back to especially entrepreneurial programs. We help sponsor the $50,000 Big Idea program. And then, of course, my spirituality and my spiritual growth is very important to me. And we're involved in a couple of spiritual organizations, which I think is really critical, because at the end of the day, we're surely not here to make as much money as we can and die, but I think we're here to grow as spiritual beings and whatever it is to find our purpose and joy in life.
Greg, we're coming close to the final turn here. Before I ask you for contact info, what have I not asked you today that you wished I would have?
You've done great. I think we talked about the mission critical, important stuff and the important stuff about the story of ProForma. And as you well know, if I haven't already said it, we have about 200 employees. We call them support team members. And without them, we would never be doing what it is that we're doing. We have great suppliers that, or since we don't print what we sell, but we have great suppliers or vendor partners that do supply us. They're an important part of our organization. And so there's thousands and thousands of people who have contributed to the success of ProForma. And so it's never a me thing. It's clearly the ProForma story is clearly a we thing.
This has been a fabulous conversation and a revisit of history. And I can't let you get away, though, without offering up some contact info for those who want to hear more and possibly do that offline. How do people find you again, Greg?
Yeah, I'm very approachable. I'm Greg, Greg, at ProForma, ProForma.com. And we have a website, ProForma.com. And if there's anybody that's looking for a little bit of feedback, a little bit of advice, a little bit of mentoring, I'm happy to give to others the way others were so giving to me.
It's been a fabulous conversation, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this, Greg. Thank you so much.
Great to reconnect with you, my friend.
Greg Muzzillo, founder of ProForma. Well, that's a wrap for today, but there's a lot more coming in the weeks ahead, including Peter Yang, co-founder and managing partner at PokeWorks, Hand & Stone's CEO John Tezza, Josh Wall, Chief Operating Officer at Unleashed Brands, an industry veteran and BNI Global CEO and IFA Chair, Mary Kennedy Thompson, to name just a few. Subscribe today and never miss an episode of Franchise Today. You can find us at franchisetodaypodcast.com or wherever you go to chase your pods. Next week, I'm joined by Sam Cauchi, CEO of an amazing company called One Huddle, where they have taken training to a whole new level with gamification. You don't want to miss this one, I guarantee it. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.